Hey, hello, good afternoon. Welcome to another live edition of the Old Geezer Show. I'm sorry I haven't done one for a couple of days, but I felt the need to take a bit of time off, as I think I said to you earlier this week. But I'm feeling a bit on the top line again now. The trouble is, what happens is I think as older people, we sometimes get a bit overloaded with stuff that we want to do. And out of the blue, you go, oh, no, I can't do that. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. And so that's what happened this time round. I think I really got a little touch of that. But today I was listening to the lovely Jeremy Vine on Radio 2 at lunchtime. And he was talking about something that really rung my bells. Now, got to say this to you, honestly, that I'm a great believer that we should have decent choices at the end of our lives as well as all the way through our lives. And here's one for you. Back at the beginning of this month, I think on the 5th of February, I did a little piece about cremation, because I think cremation is a bit uncivilized. What did you do with the deceased body? We threw it in an oven and burnt it. And I kind of don't like that very much. I'm sorry, that's awful, isn't it? But there you go. So what are we looking at? We're looking at cremation as a subject. And on the Jeremy Vine show, they were talking about cheap cremations. They were saying that if you don't have all the folderol, if you don't have all of the idiot walking down the street wearing a top hat, walking in front of a hearse and things like that, if you don't have that, if you don't have a service, and if you don't want to have that kind of stuff, if you would just like to get rid of the body before it starts to go rotten, then I think there is an interesting one. I think the reality is that most of us have an idea of how we would like to end our lives. A very good friend of mine a few years ago set up his own funeral. He worked it all out. He worked out what he wanted to do. I was going to say he was lucky that he could, but he wasn't, because he had terminal cancer and he knew he was dying. But nonetheless, he wanted to work out what was going to happen. And I have to tell you, I'm not religious, as you probably realize, but he had a fantastic little funeral service at the Salvation Army. That was lovely. He had people who he knew doing bits and pieces, and that was it. There was a little cremation, I think. I don't know whether there was a proper ceremony, but it certainly wasn't open to the public, to his friends or anybody. And what we got was just a simple little service that reminded us of the man, and that was fine. Then Jeremy Vine was on today, and what he was actually doing, I think, reading between the lines, was kind of publicising almost a funeral director's scheme to get in on the bandwagon, as it were, with low-cost funerals or low-cost cremations, in which people are cremated kind of not with a big service and kind of not with any kind of undertaking at all. That you just give them, effectively, they come and collect the body, and when they're burnt it, they bring you back the ashes, which I think is perfectly adequate. And that comes down apparently to about 12 or 1300 quid, compared to the undertaker's standard charges of around apparently 5,000 or 6,000 pounds, maybe more, for a funeral in the UK. I think that's daylight bloody robbery at the best of times. So there you go. So what can we say? What can we say? Now, Jeremy Vine was going on about this, and he was just doing a straight comparison between doing a standard, as it were, fully ceremonied up cremation and doing one of these cheap cremations. But I think the reality is that nobody's looked at cremations as a way of disposing of human bodies and tried to work out a better way. Let me tell you a couple of facts that hardly anyone knows about cremations. Cremations are, in terms of the actual process of cremating someone, they are somewhat expensive and quite polluting. Did you know that, guys? Here we go. We're going to talk about pollution, and we're going to talk about cremations. For that, I'll say hello to people. So we've got Algernon out there. Good afternoon to you, Algernon. And Daniel, nothing wrong with a bit of self-care. Well, no, you're very right, I have to tell you. Okay, and or if you can't afford the ridiculous cost of death to have a decent funeral. I think that's right. I think the reality is that, from my point of view, I'm not really interested. I'm not going to be here when my funeral takes place. And if people want to go down the pub, I'd honestly be very glad to buy them a few drinks, but I don't really want to have some kind of service or some kind of event from it. I'd be just grateful if they had a nice time and remembered me kindly, because I think that's that's what it's all about, actually. There you go. So, what are we going to talk about on this one? What we're going to talk about today is that we need to get some better way of getting cremations or human remain removal, disposal, done in a more environmentally and generally friendly way, because we have this thing going on at the moment where 70% of people in the UK, apparently more than 70%, are cremated. And for every cremation, we're talking about low carbon economies, for every cremation, the average amount of carbon dioxide released to the atmosphere by the whole process is something like 530 pounds weight of carbon. Did you know that? I didn't know that. That was actually the result of some American research a few years ago. And they literally weighed how much carbon in gaseous form came out of the chimney. 538 pounds is the average. But that's not necessarily the worst thing. The worst thing is that there's something called nitrogen oxide and nitrogen dioxide that comes out of the cremator's chimneys. And that is actually a dangerous substance. So there you have it. It's a very scary one, that one, because it does actually cause harm to people. Nitrogen oxide and dioxide are dangerous to human life and to human health. Take the nails out of that one. So the place where we're getting rid of the bodies, there was a peculiar little bit of information, which is if you have a cremation, what comes out of the chimney is the equivalent for something like 3,000 motor cars sitting outside the crematorium for an hour with their engines running. What do you think of that? There are better ways. I take the point. I'm gonna just pull up this comment because I think it's very valid. On the other hand, once you're dead, are you even bothered about how dangerous the cremation? Well, no, in fact, no, you're not. But on the other hand, surely I think most of us would like to think that you were kind of not doing any additional harm. And there are ways, let's put it this way, there are ways of actually getting a body cremated or removed or disposed of without actually burning it. Horrifying, isn't it? The other thing about cremations that I just wanted to mention is that when you have a cremation, the oven that you're cremated in is raised to between 800, 900 degrees and 1,000, 1,200 degrees. And that uses a hell of a lot of hours of gas because it takes between 1 and 2 hours to actually burn a human body in a cremator. And for that time, the gas is on full and it's burning away. There you go. So it's expensive. There are other ways of doing it. There is a way called human, are you ready for this? Human composting, in which the human body is essentially almost turned to dust, isn't it? Really, it's actually turned into soil. It's added to straw and other plant material, and over a period of time, around 30 days, it reduces effectively to soil. Isn't that interesting? It's left for another 30 days, so there's a total of 60 days, in which time you can add it to your garden and grow flowers in it. It's interesting, that one, isn't it? Proving that there's useful stuff in the human body anyway. But that's a really interesting one, and that has a big disadvantage, which is the amount of time it takes. It doesn't need much in the way of inputs, unlike the unlike burning. But that's a nice idea. I'll come back to you. It doesn't use a lot of heat. What it takes is time. But there is another method which is called resummation. I don't know where they got the word from. Resummation is actually where you dissolve the body. You use an alkaline solution, fairly high temperatures, 300 degrees, but hot water at 300 degrees, and you actually liquefy all of the body. And according to Yorkshire Water, you can run the water that comes off of this process down the drain with no harm. That seems to me to be a really good idea. So there you have it. What do you think about that? I love that idea of doing. Personally, I like the bit when they just lay your body, they put it in a biodegradable cloth, I don't know what you call it, death wrapping, and put you in this box with plant materials and bits and pieces and let you moulder away over 30 days. Then they pull your bones out and your pacemaker out and let the rest moulder away for another 30 days. And then you can be used to plant your rose bush in. I think that's really quite nice, but the time required is long. But the water method seems to me to be really, really good. It would stand up, I think, against any other method. And the point about it being that it does actually result in a liquid end to your body that's of no harm to anybody and possibly does some good, I think. So that's interesting. See what people have got to say. So what have we got? So Alan, good afternoon, Alan. Perhaps they should at least use the waste heat to heat local homes, or put in a heat battery or a heat exchanger or something. Damn good idea. Why wouldn't we do that? I've got to ask, really. Why wouldn't we? There's a lot of heat coming out of that chimney. And if you could take the heat out of it, perhaps you could take some of the nasty stuff out of it at the same time. What else have we got? So, Daniel, the thing of it is funerals are products to be sold. Any potential greener alternative wouldn't be. Well, I think it could, actually, to be honest with you, Daniel. From the little bit of reading and stuff that I've done, this idea of dissolving the body in water would actually work, because using a cremator, which is a big furnace machine, using a cremator to burn the body takes a couple of hours, and it's a big, expensive machine. The device that's used to actually dissolve the body with water is about the kind of equivalent. It's the same kind of ballpark, and it comes out with a better, safer product. So wouldn't you choose to use that instead of burning someone? Don't forget, all of the disposal of a human body is really done for the relatives more than the person, because it doesn't bother me what happens to that lump of meat. Someone said it's just a lump of pot roast. So what do you think? I'd love to continue this conversation. I think Daniel's got good points. I think those points especially are good. But I think that, in fact, funeral directors would continue to just do what they do, and they just use a different method of getting rid of the corpse. Bury it. Would you like to be buried, burned, or liquefied? I think actually it comes across. One of the things that comes across from the American experience, where this is happening, don't forget, the American experience is that bodies, people who are having the choice of what's done with their bodies, believe that the liquid method is a kinder way of doing it than burning it. I don't know how that works in your head, but I guess the reality is, if you think that's the case, maybe that is the case. So there you go. What do you think? I love it. There's a lot of interest here. And I think, to be absolutely frank and straightforward with you, we do need to make a decision about this, because I don't believe that burning bodies is really the way to go. If we could find a better way to do it, if we could find a, well, I don't know about safer thing, if we could find another way of disposing of human bodies without the implied violence of burning your dead body, I think I'd like to see it. So, what has young Daniel got to say? Let's just go and have a look at that. Here's a funny thing there. Well, I wish you would hurry up and type, Daniel. because I want to read what your funny thing is. A funny thing happened on the way to the funeral or on the way to the cremation. Okay. What's he going to say? Yeah, the super duper rich are investing in cryogenically freezing themselves. Think about how entirely ungreen that is. I think you're right. I think that's absolutely right. And you've got maybe the topic for another show there. If you'd like to appear on that with me, I'd love to have you. So there you go. Let's see where this one goes. I'm going to put this online. Any further comments, please make them. I'd love to see what you've got to say on either Facebook or on YouTube. You're welcome to post comments. As ever, I do love hearing from people. Oh, hey, okay. A bit more. And here the poor people are being made to worry about greenhouse gases from well, yeah, but I still think it's quite sensible. I still don't like the idea, to be honest with you. I'm going to ask a straight question. Would you rather be burned or liquefied? Apparently, we've got another comment from Alan. Apparently, in both the cases of recemation, which is the water thing, and in the case of human composting, any transmissible disease would not survive the process. There you go. Germs don't last through it because in the liquefaction, if you like, of the human corpse, that is done with alkaline chemistry that kills germs without exception and actually reduces stuff to water. And in the case of human composting, that also achieves a high temperature. These both processes need a high temperature, but the high temperature we're talking about is 200 or 300 degrees. I think the temperature in the States is 300 and something. So there you go. It's going to be interesting to see where this goes. I really think it is worth discussing. I think it's possibly worth, I don't know, going further on it. And Daniel, I will actually have a look myself as well at that that bit that you're talking about, cryogenically freezing oneself. Perhaps I should do it, but unfortunately I've only got £27.50 in my bank. Okay, there you go. Thank you so much for watching live if you have been. If you haven't watched live, then I hope you'll find the show interesting and engaging. I would love all of your comments about what happens when you're dead. What would you like to happen today? When you're dead, would you like to be buried and let the worms eat you? Would you like to be burned in a big furnace? That's a bit worrying, being burnt in a big furnace. If you haven't left a good life, does that just mean you go from the big furnace at the cremation, at the crematorium, to another big furnace in another place, if you've been a bad person, or liquefaction, or being composted and turned to earth? That last one, being composted and turned to earth, I have to say, appeals to me a little bit because I think it's a good use for a body. All those chemicals and things are useful. And there you go. Okay. I have to say that I've really enjoyed this. Jeremy Vine did annoy me, but I've got over it now, so that's okay. And what I'll say to you is thank you so much for watching if you have been. I've found it really an interesting one to do. And it's like some of these things, it's an interesting thing to look at and think about, isn't it? If you have an opinion, let me know. I would just love to hear from you. Don't hesitate to get in touch. I'm Chris. This is the Old Geezer Show, and I will see you soon.